Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalise and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be. Hi, welcome to Becoming Untriggered podcast. Today we're talking about anxious mothers, volatile mothers, emotionally absent fathers, angry fathers, and how these behaviors, which are the most common behaviors that we see in our clients, can really affect not only the partner that you choose, you know, that old adage, you pick your father or you pick the opposite of your father. That really is true to a certain degree. We're going to be unpacking that, but also how it affects how you show up with whichever partner you have chosen. So we're going to look at basically gender role modeling. What did your primary caregivers role model to you? How did you absorb that? Because you're going to. And then how is that playing out perhaps unconsciously in terms of what you expect from your partner, in terms of what you feel you deserve from your partner?
Yeah, and it's not always linear. So it's not always like an anxious mother equals this. It's often the combination of parents that you experienced that can contribute to your both internal reality, so how you feel. Do you feel anxious? Do you feel confident? Do you love yourself? But also then how that's projected externally to the partner that you want to see or want to be with or unconsciously are drawn towards.
And your kids. I really noticed that. We've got two girls and a boy. The way I react, despite wanting to be totally fair, totally equal and treat them both in the same way, I don't. And obviously that's got a lot to do with society and all of that. But it's also to do with how you were treated by your parents and how your siblings were treated by your parents. So gender, what you've inherited in terms of what the gender role is and how that plays out with the opposite gender or the same gender is so crucial to your sense of identity without even realizing it.
It's very crucial and it's very complex.
Yeah.
Just thinking about that, I think that the relationship with the children, the same sex as you, is very much based on your relationship with your parents or how you wanted to be treated or how you unconsciously were treated. And then the other sex is slightly different because you have no experience from their perspective.
That's why I think we can be more lenient without realizing, because we don't understand.
For the other sex.
I know that with our daughters, I think I'm harsher. And I think you're harsher with our son because we're like, I see what you're doing. I see that. No, don't even try that. I feel I'm harsher because I get it, or I think I get it. Worse, perhaps, because maybe I don't get it, but I think I get it.
Yeah. But also I think there's a lot to do with how you view yourself. I think we're both on a journey towards self-love, but also I think we push ourselves. We're like self-critical or we analyze ourselves. And therefore I see that in our son. And therefore I view him through the same eyes. I want to push him because that's how I view myself. That's how I treat myself.
No one wants their kids to make the same mistakes they did.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. But I think more of it's unconsciously how you view yourself.
Yeah. So going back to parents, obviously our parents had that with us. They don't want us to make the same mistake, if they were even aware at that level. I'm not sure mine were, but I think every parent wants a better childhood, at least for their children than they experienced. Whether that causes its own set of trauma or not is a different story. But let's talk about the most common types of parent that we help our clients heal from. So just to give some background to that, psychodynamic coaching is all about how your past is affecting your present. So my work with women, Andrew's work with men is very much about healing the mother imprint, healing the father imprint in terms of what negative effects that primary caregiver may have had on you, directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously. they're going to have an effect. So we work with parents to help them clear that baggage so that they're not passing it on unconsciously. And I'm going to start with women. Many of the mothers that present issues, shall we say, for my mother clients are volatile or anxious and depressed. So two different kinds. So I want to start with the volatile mother. The volatile, maybe that's anger, maybe that's just unpredictable, going from one extreme, going from very calm to very angry, or very calm to withdrawing, like using the silent treatment as a kind of weaponized method of control. And this usually brings up a lot of anger in my clients, because we are the generation, I think I can generalize, that are aware of gentle parenting, conscious parenting in perhaps a way that our parents weren't. I know it was around then. It certainly was around then, but I don't think it was as widespread. And it can be really, really frustrating to know that you are making a supreme effort every fucking day to show up as this gentle, respectful, conscious parent. And it's almost like the more you do it, the more you realize how your mother didn't do it. Because, women are emotional. Women are more emotional, I think, on the whole than men. So we're going to be volatile more than men. But to have had a mother that was really volatile and it seemed like she didn't put in any effort or didn't put in any repair while we're doing it can bring up a lot of really deep-seated resentment. And I'm saying this now because when we move on to the father, it's often the opposite. My clients often like, yeah, I'm not really bothered. It's just disappointing, but yeah, whatever. Whereas the mother brings up a really strong, visceral, physical reaction. How could she? Why was she like this? Why didn't I deserve better treatment?
Yeah, anger's definitely a common reaction to that type of upbringing. And I think you're right in what you say. There's kind of anger at not getting what you wanted or needed. But also I think there's repressed anger from that moment of not being seen and not being held by your mother. Whether we like it or not, the mother's got a really important role to play in the early days of childhood. And a lot of that role, if the mother's at home, is about safety and is about love and nourishment and nurture, attention, all those types of things that unconsciously we know we need as children. So when the person that is in charge of your safety as a child is volatile, then that creates a real lack of safety in the early years for people.
Yeah, it definitely brings up lack of safety, but it brings up more anger. Maybe anger is the initial reaction.
I find that the anger is on the top.
Yeah, and then underneath, oh God, actually I never felt safe because I never knew how she was going to be from one moment to the next.
Yeah, so if you're rock, if the mother of the household is unsafe, then the world is unsafe. And that has an impact on how you view the world, how you view yourself in the world. Because if your mother's not able to give you that safety and unconditional love and attention all the time, then that affects your sense of self and your safety. So it has deep-rooted side effects for the rest of your life. Now, in terms of relationally how that turns up, the way I see that turn up in men is that often they get attracted to similar women because they have an unconscious belief that they don't deserve to have somebody that's capable of being safe, being loving, being nurturing. They believe that this is what the relationship is like. And often that comes with quite a placid father figure, somebody who's just trying to survive and calm the situation down. And a lot of the times when my clients have mothers like this, the dad takes them to one side. It's like, it's just your mum. It's just the way it is. We just need to be quiet. Just need to survive and get through this volatile behavior. So if you're learning that's the way that it is, that's the way women are, that's the way you need to deal with them, then you're going to attract this person into your life.
And it's the opposite of emancipation, right? So the same with the women. If you've witnessed your mother basically mistreat your father and not give him the respect that he deserves by not self-censoring in any way, just allowing this torrent of, well, you can call it trauma dumping or torrent of emotion out. I remember my mum would do that, actually. My dad would come back from work really late, like 9 p.m., sometimes even 10 p.m. And it would just be, and this happened, and blah, blah, is this tsunami of, here's all my pent-up anxiety from the day and all my frustrations at how I've been treated by the world. You process it for me. So I obviously didn't know any different. And I know that I did that with you big time when we first met, not only because I didn't know how to process my emotions because I hadn't been taught, also because that was what was role modeled to me, right? Oh, yeah, you just offload onto a man. A man can hold that. A man will process it for you.
Should be able to hold that. Should be your container.
Yeah. So it's kind of this double-edged thing of the man is strong. He can process things for me. He is safe. But also, I'm not respecting him. I'm just using him as this vehicle for me to dump in. And that didn't mean that I then attracted a man that was placid, even though my dad took it all and was the safe person, because I'm also a bit scared of men. So like you said, it is a bit complex.
Definitely a combination.
But the role modeling that I received that men can take it, but basically whatever you throw at a man, it's their duty to take. So if I think back to past relationships, they pretty much didn't succeed if the man pushed back. That's when I've split up with boyfriends, because the ones that went, what you doing? I was like, unconsciously, I'm the drama queen. I'm the princess. You need to calm me down and take what I throw at you. The ones that did take it were long-term relationships. So
long suffering.
Yeah. All of that kind of unconscious stuff. I wasn't consciously going, oh, I will mistreat a man. I will dump my stuff. And as we see with our couples work, you have to get to that realization that you've both got stuff to process. So when you and I realize, oh, hold on, this isn't right. You pushed back and I took responsibility.
Like your mother, you had an unbearable load of repressed emotion and trauma from your childhood, and it's got to go somewhere, right? Unless you repress it. And when you're attaching to it, you're like, well, that's what a partner's for.
So that's the way that I see an angry mother and a placid father playing out for me, for us in our relationship, and then for my clients. How would you say that that plays out in a relationship for your men clients?
As I said earlier, I think it plays out in the man believing that they have to be like the savior and a doorstep and to take the trauma dumping.
But you work with them when they're not, well, we work with them as couples when they're fed up, right? They will do it up until a certain point, and then it's like, hold on, I feel shit.
It's like all of these things. It's an unconscious pattern that's running inside them. Like nobody with self-love and boundaries would put up with it. But because they don't love themselves, because they had that upbringing, and because they've been modelled that it's the man's job just to take it with no boundaries, they're just continuing that, call it generational trauma, call it dysfunctional patterns, whatever it is. So, yeah, and that leads to so much unhappiness, especially for the man. You know, it's very emasculating being in that role. Depressing, but it's not a nice place to be at all. So it's about going through the process and healing that. And first of all, it's really difficult because you shine a light on it. And it's like, wow, this isn't my choice, actually. I haven't chosen to be with this woman. I've actually been attracted to her because of my dysfunctional childhood. And that's a really difficult stage of the process.
I think you can choose them and be aware that you don't choose them in this dynamic.
You choose them for some reason, but I think the trauma bond is strong. Like the trauma bond is a massive...
Yeah, well, we made it through, though. It's not like you were like, oh my God, I don't want to be with her.
It's a part of the process. When you shine a light on everything, it's like, oh, wow. Then there's stuff, but you're almost starting again from that point. It's like, okay, let's rebuild the relationship based on us being present without this dynamic, without this trauma dynamic. We had plenty that we were attracted to each other for, to hold on to. There's physical attraction, there's things you've got in common, and there's shared beliefs. There's the children's, there's all the good stuff that you're attracted to somebody. This is just the trauma bond stuff.
So that's the kind of angry, volatile mother, which, like I said, provokes a really strong reaction in my clients. And then we've got the kind of opposite of that, the anxious, over the top, perhaps slightly suffocating, maybe depressed. So in terms of energy, if you imagine the volatile, angry mother is putting out energy, she's very kind of open. This would be the opposite energy, collapsing inwards. That can be equally damaging because in my clients, at least, perhaps they might feel a bit more sorry. It's actually harder. They don't feel angry with these mothers. They feel more sorry for them. But it's really, like you said about the man, disempowering, because the clients that I have that had this mother find it really hard to tap into their power. They don't know what the power of a woman is because they've never seen it in action. They've only seen this form of collapse inwards, this kind of martyrdom. Sometimes it comes out as passive aggressive martyrdom. I know I can do that sometimes, but this, really lack of connection to your inner fire, your inner strength. And yet they find it hard to blame their mother for that because their mother was probably quite caring as well. She was that kind of soft nurturer. Again, we're massively generalizing as always, but
yeah, this is a common one, but it's a tricky one, like you said, because the volatile one, it's like, oh wow, that was difficult. Like, yes, I've got trauma maybe from this volatile person.
She should have been calmer.
Yeah, the anxious mum, most of my clients that have had an anxious mum have a story about a perfect childhood. Because the anxious mum often is very caring because they're worried about the kids all the time. It's like you're going to die if you walk out the house. You're going to die crossing the road. So I want to look after you. I don't want you to go out. I want to take care of you. I want to bake for you. I want to make sure you're safe. So it comes across as quite nurturing. And it is nurturing, actually. So
it's too nurturing.
Well, I don't think it's too nurturing. I don't think you can be too nurturing. I think it's the balance against the nurturing comes from something else. But in my clients, they feel very nurtured. They feel very loved. And they've often still got very close relationships with these mothers because the mums want to be close, right? They want to be good grandmas. They want to be close to the family. So they're still often part of the family. But the biggest side effect I see with these men is that they're anxious. Right? They can be successful men like, yes, I'm getting on a plane to a business meeting next week. But actually, for me, I think the plane's going to crash. Like, I'm worried. I'm worried about getting on the plane. And I'm worried that things are going to go wrong. And I'm worried that we're not going to have any money in 3 months' time. So their life is kind of good. They're high functioning. They've had a good experience probably. And they're lucky. They'll consider themselves to be lucky. But actually, they're living this good experience with anxiety, just as their parents were, just as their mother was.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like when I think about psychodynamic coaching, when I explain it to people, I say that your parents, because they're your universe for a good many years, they affect the way that you view yourself, the way that you view or connect to others, and the way that you view or connect to the world, whether it's a safe place or not. So what you're saying there is with an anxious, nurturing mother, your connection to yourself is a good one.
You feel loved.
Yeah, your connection to yourself is a good one. Perhaps also your connection to others is a good one. You're able to connect or attach securely. The bit that's damaged is your connection to the world.
Yeah.
Your world is very small and insular and perhaps always focused. This sounds mean, but you're holding onto your mum's skirt type of thing.
Yeah, maybe in some ways. Maybe there hasn't been the kind of
breaking away,
the rite of passage into full manhood, because number one, the mother doesn't want to let go because the mum's anxious. So the mum will unconsciously try and keep the boy in the nest for as long as possible. But also that anxiety creates the fear, which will mean that the boy will always go back to the mum. And they're in a bit of a trauma bond, actually. They're in this anxiety.
So there's the relationship issue right there.
Well, that creates a
Daddy
big relationship
is
issue.
more into his mummy than he is into mummy.
Did we have that dynamic?
You tell me.
A little bit. Well, it's from your point of view.
Definitely we had that dynamic from my point of view. 100%. I didn't feel... Again, this is always energetic because on the surface of things, you were great, but I didn't feel you were on my side. You have a very strong family connection, which obviously is attractive in itself. Most women want to be with a guy who's into family, who cares about family and keeping those bonds strong. That's a good dad potential. But when those bonds are so strong that birth family comes over chosen family, that's not good.
Yeah, I think it's really common. That's certainly what we went through. And I think that from my point of view, it was a result of definitely my mum being nurturing but anxious. So her priority was keeping us safe and keeping us in the nest, which I think is half natural.
Yeah.
But I think the other bit is the father. Where's the father that's taking the boy out of the nest? And that's what I didn't have. I didn't have that balance.
And also, why would you, if you think of me on one side and then there's a chasm, cliff, and then your mum on the other side and you're on the side of your mum, why on earth would you drop off that cliff knowing that I'm not that type? A man, however old, knows that his mother loves him, or at least this kind of mother. You had a nurturing mother. You know that that love is unconditional and forever lasting. You didn't know that of me. I think none of these men fully trust. That's the issue. It's a lack of trust. It's a lack of commitment. They don't want to jump away from their mother's skirts because they're jumping into the unknown. And that's essentially what feels like a man that has done that. That's a different kind of initiation. It's not being led into the forest and being told you need to survive for a month. It's, yes, you've got a solid base of love, but can you survive without it, potentially? That's the risk that you're taking. And many men don't do that. And the women really feel that. It's like, you're not loving me as much as you love your mum. Well, take the risk. Why am I not worth taking that risk for?
I see that. I get that completely. And I guess it also depends on what type of woman you go for. So if I'd have had a different upbringing entirely, or if I'd have had my mum's influence, but maybe a different dad's influence, maybe I would have gone for somebody who was the replica of my mum. Maybe I would have gone for a nurturing somebody who loved themselves, if I completely loved myself.
Yeah.
But I didn't because of my other experiences. So it's complicated. I completely agree with what you say. But also I think anyone with childhood trauma, the part of them that is still fragmented and alive from that trauma, the inner child. So if you come into adulthood and you've got the inner child, the fragmented inner child, you're always going to be linked to your mother through that. Because it's like, I wasn't fully a man when we met. I was still this scared, rejected little boy part of me. So that's also what ties you back to the unconditional safety and love of your mother. And then when you heal that, you can fully step into this relationship, which is an adult relationship.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest thing for me, not necessarily how you change. Your change simultaneously allowed me to see you differently. But it was me healing my inner child, and therefore that part of me not needing my mother anymore and stepping into maturity. That's when we had a different relationship.
Yeah. And then for women, I think women that have an anxious but nurturing perhaps mother, yes, they're going to role model that themselves with their children. Great. But they may pick a man that's domineering or controlling because they haven't yet touched into their power. So I've had clients who they're happy, but they're not fulfilled. They're not they're just fulfilling that caretaking role, which may be all that they want to be. Amazing, they want to be a nurturing mother, but they're not able to stand up for their children. They're not able to lay healthy boundaries. I remember I had one client who said she was at a party and her son was being picked on or something, and she was watching it happen. And then another mum intervened and said, what is going on? That's not okay. And she was still kind of in freeze mode. And she said to me, I just want to be able to be that mum that can intervene. And she'd had a mother that was kind, loving, nurturing, but she'd never seen that in action, that you can say, that's wrong. You can speak up. You can lay healthy boundaries. You can say no. But that's really hard if all you've received is nurture and you haven't. I don't think that's healthy. I think you have to be able to lay boundaries. You're not a good mum. Being nurturing isn't being a good mum by itself. You have to be able to lay safe, healthy boundaries and be able to say no. So that's where it comes up as a wound in my clients.
Definitely. Shall we move on to absent fathers?
Yeah.
Both emotionally and physically absent fathers. It's really common. Like now we're all working from home. We're all trying to be good dads. We're all getting involved. We're all at the hospital. We're all taking time off. But the generation before that, maybe our father's generation, there certainly wasn't the pressure or even the inclination to be there. And I think that was natural. That was coming at a point in time where everyone was just trying to, maybe they were the only income in the house and they had to work and they were trying to survive. So they were absent. But, also I think that's another one that creates a story in my clients of, my dad worked really hard for us. He was a good breadwinner. He was always out working for us. It's like, great. So how was he, like, can you remember connecting with him? Can you remember? No, he just used to come home and then he was tired and he used to read the paper. And, I can remember standing around just waiting for him to say hello or a bit of attention. And, the problem is that very much for men, their sense of self and sense of self-worth is created in that interaction with father. Just your father seeing you, getting down on your level, caring about you, being interested in you.
Playing with you.
Yeah, playing, throwing a ball, caring. Like some people say, I remember throwing a ball with my dad, but he wasn't present. He didn't care. Kids just know. They get it. They're so needy. And that's just the way it is. Kids are really needy. You can't fake it. You can't be at home with your kids playing, thinking about emails at work. Right? You just can't do it. So these men who had hardworking fathers that were absent emotionally or physically, it leaves a massive hole in their sense of self-worth. And what they tend to do is they tend to adapt in that early year to try and get the attention. So, okay, if I'm interested in football, because my dad's interested in football, then we get to talk. Or if I win something at school, or if I'm in the sports team, then we get to talk. So you basically learn that love is conditional and you learn to be a people pleaser, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think there is something about recognition from a dad that feels different to recognition from a mum. I know that I chased recognition from my dad. I used to garden at weekends. I'm not a gardener. I've never been a gardener. I never will be a gardener. But I used to garden because, I'd cut the hedges for him or cut the edges of the lawn or weed because I wanted him to say, that's an amazing job. Wow, you've helped me so much. And what straight edges. I can't see one weed, I
think it's because mum's love's supposed to be unconditional.
But dad's praise somehow feels better. I don't know why, actually.
It's almost like because mum's always telling you you're great.
Or maybe it's because the dad's absent. I mean, relating back to absent. The more absent your dad is, the more value the praise has, right?
I think that's what it is. Like, if mum's doing a good job and you don't really get any praise for it, it's like, yeah, I know you love me, whatever. But when dad finally turns up and gives you some praise, then it's like, because it's really needed.
And also that generation perhaps weren't very emotionally available.
Yeah.
So
for
they
sure.
couldn't express daily small amounts of love. It had to come in. You've done a really great job with that.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of chasing that really obvious
Pat on the back.
praise. Yeah.
So the way I see that turning up in relationships is that often the man's present, and often the man is chasing the pat on the back that comes from work, that comes outside of the family. So his self-worth is linked to the job a lot of the time. So he's not that present at home. He can be really focused on work, he can be out the house a lot. And he prioritizes the outside praise over like being a good father sometimes, because that's his sense of self-worth. And unconsciously, your sense of self-worth is more important than anything.
It also means that the man, the son, the grown adult son of an absent man, doesn't know how to connect to a woman. He's never had it role modelled. He's like, well, my job is to go out and earn. But when they're at home, they're like, like you said, I'll read the paper, or I'll cook dinner, or I'll do rather than be. I won't connect. They're present when they're in the house, but they're not connecting to anyone because they don't know how to. They only know how to provide. And
Exactly.
That's bad.
Well, it's not enough for a lot of people in a relationship.
Sometimes it's enough for women. I know so many women. I don't work with them because they're the kind of women that don't want to do the work. But I know of many, many women who are married to absent husbands who provide, usually a lot. They provide very nicely.
You've got to be providing a lot to fill the gap.
Yeah, they've got a nice car, they've got a nice house, but there is no relationship. And perhaps they've chosen that because they had an absent father, so they don't particularly like men deep, deep, deep down. Or, like you said, they don't believe that they're worthy of a connection with a man. So they are taking what they can get. They're taking the house, they are nurturing with the children, but there's no connection with the husband. So sometimes that works, in a practical sense, but you're not role modeling a great dynamic for your children.
You're just repeating the pattern, copy and paste, which a lot of people do. I mean, so many people do.
So I had an absent dad, because he was working really, really hard, but he did not play, but he did do activities with us, much more than my mum did. But I'm thinking, how did that relate to who I sought? I think I've always sought men's praise, whether that's a yoga teacher or a teacher of a course I'm doing. I went into wine, for God's sake. That was my first career, wine. Because that's what my dad loved. I mean, now I look back at it, it's so obvious. But that's the degree to which our parents can influence what we seek from the world. If we haven't had it from that primary caregiver, we will look for it outside. So again, like the gardening, I was looking to be something that my father would approve of. And I think that also carried this through into who I picked as boyfriends. Definitely. It was like the big question was, will my father approve? Will I get a stamp of approval for the boy that I've picked? And that was my praise. It wasn't really about the guy, whether I liked them, whether it was suited. It was, is this right for me? You tell me if I've done well. That's so dysfunctional.
Yeah, so my father was definitely absent. Now, he was absent because he literally left the house and shacked up with another woman. So he just left. And he was absent actually after that as well, in many ways. So I guess I wouldn't class him as absent because there was just a much bigger trauma there, which was the perceived rejection. But I guess that's connected. Like if your father is absent, there is a feeling of, well, I'm not good enough for him to be present.
Also, I have to take on the mantle of the man in the house. That's a massive one, which we haven't touched on.
Yeah.
Many boys of divorced parents or absent fathers feel it's then their duty, especially if they've got a mother who is not that strong. They feel it's their role to step up into that father figure.
Yeah, I think that definitely happens. And also I think with me, the way it affected me was, it definitely affected my self-esteem. So absent father was rejection for me. So it affected the way I viewed myself. But also it made me not want to do that. So my fathering principles were, I'm going to be present. I'm not going to be like my dad. And I think a lot of guys are like that. They're like, I don't want to do that. And that's kind of one thing that you can do on the surface to try and amend that experience as a child. But it's the stuff underneath that stays there, the lack of self-worth. And actually, I did a process fairly recently on myself, a deep process, because we've just moved back here to the UK and seen my father. And it came out that actually there was a lot of blame. There was so much blame, self-blame for me as a child, as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old child. I completely blamed myself for my absent father. It's like, why aren't you good enough? Why aren't you good enough for your dad to hang around? It was really painful then. And I've been carrying that around with me since then. Yeah. So, of course, that weaves its way into everything.
That's a big burden to carry.
Do you deserve abundance? Do you deserve love? Do you deserve to be happy?
But also, because you've had such a bad experience, you're going to want to create the opposite, like you said. And that's a massive burden on yourself. I need to be better. I need to be, oh no, I'm being more like my dad. It's a burden to carry in terms of your expectations of yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
So absent fathers, for my clients, I want to touch on this. Often they're disappointing. So like I said, the volatile mother provokes a really strong reaction. But absent or kind of weak, enabling fathers, I actually find it sadder when someone's like, yeah, didn't really bring up anything, I don't care. That's kind of worse in a way, because when there's a strong reaction, you know there's a strong bond that's been betrayed. With a dad, it's often like, yeah, disappointing, not bothered, bit like, daddy pig, that, which is such a bad archetypal look at weak men. But how this plays out in relationships is that they then don't respect their husbands, and they treat them like they don't deserve respect, like they're not really worth anything, they don't contribute anything. It's like they're almost being used as providers. And that's really sad, because that's so damaging to your children.
Yeah. So that's the weak fathers, right?
Well, absent stroke weak. Well, why they're absent is usually because they're weak.
I don't think that men ever really have that reaction to their fathers. I think an absent father for a boy is really damaging.
So you can have an absent and an angry father.
Yeah.
Because to a certain degree, the more you're absent, when they turn up, it's so dysregulating to be put into a very different dynamic of chaotic children, unpredictability and noise and mess, when they've come from 90% of their life being ordered and in control. So yeah, angry is very damaging for women, really damaging, because then you end up being scared of men, which I think is worse than anything else, because you want a relationship with a man, you want to be able to connect as equals. And when you've had an angry father, not only do my clients find it hard to tap into their own anger, again, a little bit like having a nurturing, weak mother, if they've had anger role modeled in a certain way, they then assume that that's what anger looks like. That when they tap into their anger, they are going to look as scary and volatile and aggressive as their dad did. So it's a real kind of unpacking process that has to go on to get them to slowly dip their toe into their anger and understand that their anger is their anger, and that they're going to release it in a very different way, potentially, than their dad did. So an angry dad makes them not only afraid of anger, the emotion itself, but also of men and violence and powerlessness, helplessness.
Yeah, it's very damaging to boys as well. Again, the biggest story I hear, and this is common, but I think everyone that's experienced violence at the hands of their father says, I'm sure I deserved it. I'm sure I was being naughty. I'm sure I was doing the wrong thing.
Women do that as well. I must have done something really bad.
Yeah. So not only does it affect their self-esteem, So you deserve to be beaten. You deserve to witness and experience and be the victim of the anger of this person that you look up to more than anyone else in the world. And that becomes the cornerstone of your sense of self. So there's lots of repressed anger for these men that experience this.
Who weren't able to fight back, right? You weren't, because a child can't fight back. An adult man is an adult man. They're going to overpower you physically.
Yeah, you've got the anger that you take on from your father. You've got the repressed anger about being a victim and not being able to fight back. So then you just carry that out into your adulthood, and invariably it can repeat itself. So again, a lot of the guys I work with come to me and said, I've done some stuff with my kids that I'm not proud of. You know, I've repeated some patterns that I'm really not proud of. I don't want to do that anymore. So violence and anger in dad for boys is really damaging emotionally and physically.
And we don't need to go over the whole Me Too movement, but that's at the root of the Me Too movement as well. If women are scared of men, then women let men do things that they don't want them to do. We don't know how to say no because we assume that man, we're projecting our dad onto them. And we are powerless and helpless. And of course, we're not going to say anything. Of course, we're not going to lay down a healthy boundary because it's our dad.
Yeah. And I didn't experience that kind of anger from my father, but I know you did. And I've seen how that's played out in terms of intimacy with us. It's like if a man that loves you can hurt you, then that is always going to create boundaries. That's always going to create wariness until you process it.
Is a man even capable of loving?
Yeah, and is love always linked to violence? Is love always linked to pain?
Yeah.
I think that's a big one, actually.
Huge. Yeah, until, 5 years ago, I would go into a trauma response, but I wouldn't show it. More like a freeze response. Yeah, it was freeze. Every time a man would sit next to me on a train, on a plane. I remember, you're so annoying because you've got long legs. You'd be like, I need the aisle seat. So then I'd have to go in the middle or the window, and I would be the one that would have to sit next to the stranger. And I couldn't sit next to a man. I'd have to not touch them. And if they, spread out, the feeling that they were touching me was unbearable. It's totally illogical. Obviously, they're not going to beat me up on a plane or a train. But the fact that my physical boundaries were being crossed through that touch, through that closeness that I hadn't given permission for, took me right back to being spanked.
Yep.
Crossing a physical boundary. Not okay. So yeah, of course that's going to play up in intimacy. Unsafe touch. Relearning what is safe touch. Relearning. So it's kind of full circle. Well, we said a man that's had a very nurturing woman has to jump off that cliff and take the leap of faith that the person they've chosen can love them in a way that feels as fulfilling as their mother's. Same with a woman has to take that leap of faith. The man she's chosen can love her without it being scary or involve power play.
Yeah.
And that's really hard.
Yep. So I hope you guys have found that interesting. Everyone's story is different. So everyone's got a different combination of those things. No one person is the same. But maybe you've witnessed some of your own childhood experiences in our stories, or maybe how this stuff is playing out in your current dynamic in your relationship. So I hope that's been interesting for you. The key always is that, if the past is still present with you, if the past is affecting your relationship with your other half or with your children, then there's the opportunity to investigate, heal, repair, and bring yourself out into the present moment so you can have this functional, mature relationship. So if you guys have got any questions, please let us know. We'd love to cover them in later episodes. If you've enjoyed the episode, please leave us a review and subscribe. And we'll see you soon.
If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlynn.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.